Today we'll be talking about this pretty amazing office style setup that I'm really proud of, and I just cannot wait to start telling you all about it. So without further ado, let's get started.
Bigger, bolder, faster. Going to the maximum. Bigger, bolder, faster.
Some time ago in a previous video, I showed you an office style setup that was similar to this one. It had concrete walls and of course blinds similar to those, some lamps, stuff like this. This time we wanted to go a step farther, and we went a lot of steps farther. I mean literally, because this setup is really huge. It's almost utilizing all of our space, and our studio is 10 by 10 meters. The front camera that is here is actually standing almost next to the window, so it's almost 10 meters away from the back wall. As you have probably already noticed, this setup is all about going practical. It's about concrete, wood, props, and practical lights. Of course, we use a short-throw laser projector to create a fake window, but that's it. Now let's go to the breakdown of this setup, and I would like to cover lighting as well, because I used some neat tricks that I would like to share with you. Let's go. First of all, let's start with the walls. So those walls are actually flats. We made them here at our studio. They are made from plywood and are covered with concrete. That's why they have this very nice grungy texture. They're on the heavier side. You can move them on your own. However, I would recommend a friend or an assistant if you want to move them, because it's always safer. Each of those flats is around 2 meters wide and around 2.8 meters high. So those here are actually two flats. We have one here and one here. They're put together very closely and they are clamped on the back. We use this wooden panel to cover the place where they are stitched together, and those panels are great, especially for this roll. So gripping those panels was actually pretty easy. We used those crocodile clamps here, and on the other side we clamped them with super clamps. Now we are behind the wall. You can see that it's much darker here than on the set. It has to be dark because we have the projector running in the back. So if we go a little bit farther, we have the wall that is actually the projector screen. This wall is also made out of flats and is painted gray. We are using a projector that is installed on the ceiling, and it's an ultra short throw Fengmi Max 4K laser projector. That was a mouthful. So let's go farther. Now on my left are the blinds. Those are wooden blinds, and they're actually not the best quality. However, if they're out of focus and in the back, you really can't tell the difference. We're using those blinds to shine a pattern on the wall. This pattern is really subtle, and we're using this light to make it. Let me show you this light up close. So this here is an LS60X light. It's made by Aperture and it's really cool. So this light is great for making all kinds of patterns with gobble because it's a very hard light. You can adjust it to be spot or flat with a small dial on the back. This light is not really that strong, however I find it great for many uses, even for photography. Additionally, you can see that we have a CTB gel here. However, this light is also bicolor. So we are turning it to 6500 and adding the CTB to make it more blue. So one last thing about this light, you can use this spotlight attachment to make the light really hard and to shine a very narrow beam. It can change from 15 to 30 degrees, so it's a little bit more versatile than the normal spotlight attachments that you have for your 300X light or so on. However, it has one thing that I don't really like. You can use it only for this one light, so you cannot use it with any other lights. That's a pity, however, that's how it is. You can also use gobos with this light and make all the patterns that you want, and actually it comes with a huge set of gobos. I think it's around 20 or something like that, and they're very versatile and very interesting. Okay, let's go to the front one more time. Those of you that watch all of my videos probably know that we use Philips Hue bulbs that we can control with this neat application. You can turn it off and on and even change the color, for example, from yellowish to more white. Also, you can change it to an RGB color, So you can make it red or maybe green, blue, and you know, all of the colors of the color wheel rainbow. Okay, let's go back to the normal yellowish tint. Last time one of you told me that those lights will actually flicker when they are dimmed down, and actually I noticed that it happens sometimes. I don't know if you can see it right now because I can't really tell from my camera screen. However, sometimes they really make those kind of stripes. Maybe the reason why I didn't notice is because when we are using a projector, we are always bumping up the shutter speed to 1/60th of a second instead of 1/50th. We're in Europe, so we are shooting in PAL format, so it's 25 frames per second. I can show you what happens with a projector when you change the shutter speed. Actually, I have shutter angle here in my camera, however, it works the same. Let me show you. So this is what happens when you change the shutter speed to 1/50th of a second. Actually, I cannot tell from my little screen and because of those blinds, but I can show you some B-roll right over here, and you can check it out. Okay, I'll go back to my original setting. Before we continue to the lighting setup, which I'm really eager to show you, I would like to tell you about the magic of props. So in this setup, we wanted to have books in the back. That's why we bought some books. We were considering buying fake books that are actually only the empty covers. However, we found that buying real books is actually cheaper. How is that? Well, those are books that were supposed to be thrown away, but we bought them and gave them a new home here. They're very cheap, and they're actually 30 Polish zloty for 30 kilograms of books. So it's maybe like around 25 cents for 1 kilogram of books. I will add here the calculations for the imperial system for those of you that actually don't use kilograms. Now let's go to the lights. We'll start with the backlight. Some videographers or cinematographers like to start with the key light. However, I think that lighting with the backlight first gives you an interesting perspective. A backlight is great for drawing all of the shapes of your furniture and things on the set. That's why I like to use it first and then go with other lights. In this setup, our backlight is this Kino Flo. You can see that it's also gridded. We have other lights in the back, however, they're not lighting the subject, but they're lighting the set. I really believe that lighting the set, the space that you will be shooting at, is as important, sometimes even more important than lighting the subject. Of course, for a video like a video course, lighting the subject is very important. However, you need to light all the props, all the furniture to give it some texture and to give it shape. So here we have a Kino Flo light. This light is shining down on the shelf, lighting the books. We also have some other lights that are shining on the background. Here on my left, we have aperture Nova light that is lighting this wall and this flower. Because, as I told you in my previous videos, flowers need a lot of light, especially if you feed them well, because they get darker the better you feed them. Here we have another back/side light that is also gridded and is giving me this kind of kick that you can see now on the B-roll. And jumping here quickly, we can see that we have even more lights that are shining on the back wall, and they're shining a little bit from the side to accentuate the texture and the shape of those wooden panels on the wall. And as always, when doing a setup like this, we're using a huge diffusion frame that is over our heads, and this light is lighting the space. All of the furniture, all of the tables, flowers and stuff like that is giving us this ambient light, and it's not shining really strong. However, it fills all of the unwanted dark spaces really well. So having something like this is great. I know it's maybe not easy to install at your home. However, you can always use maybe some kind of a smaller light. Maybe like the new aperture panels or something like that. And now we'll be finally talking about the lights that are lighting our talent. And that is the interesting part. As you can see over here, we have the fill light, is the aperture lantern, nothing special here. And here we have something that is kind of different. It's a diffusion frame, but it has layers of diffusion on it. As you can see, it has more layers on the bottom and a layer on the top. It doesn't have any extra layer in the center, and it has one extra layer on the most bottom part. So what actually is the purpose of this strange frame? Well, it diffuses the light, however it also cuts the light. So for example, if you have a person that has not the greatest hair situation over here and has some bald spots, it's great to have some diffusion that will cut the light on the top. This way you won't have those shiny spots here on the forehead. So that's one thing. The second part is the bottom diffusion. As you can see, we are cutting a lot of light on the bottom, and it's because when you have a table, for example, that is white, because we also use the setup with a white table, then you want to cut the light so the table is not bouncing too much light from the bottom. Because lighting from the bottom is interesting, however, it doesn't suit a lot of people. And usually we think of lighting that is from the bottom, that it resembles some kind of horror movies and stuff like that. And you don't really want your clients during interviews or video courses to look like horror movie villains. One more thing that we have here are those flags. I really wanted to cut the light coming from the side to make the face look sharper. We're shooting men here that wanted to look sharp, wanted to look strong, and doing some harsher shadows is a great way to do that. So negative fill is always great when you want to make the light look harder and more contrastly. Yeah, so this setup is pretty huge. We had a blast making it, and it took around 11 to 12 hours to set it up. However, it was worth it. Also, I had a blast making this video for you, and I hope that you like it and that you will come back for the next one. As always, if you have any questions, leave me a comment down below and I'll be happy to answer it. Okay, see you soon.
Bigger, bolder, faster. Going to the maximum. Bigger, bolder, faster.